Crystal, I understand you were one of the early women to get into paintless dent repair, and this is something I've generally see guys doing.
Yes, that is correct.
Tell me about getting into it. I mean, this is a big deal. You've got so many things. You've got a clothing line since I've known you, and now a book out. There's so much I want to cover today.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually worked inside of a dealership working special finance for 7 or 8 years, and my husband was in the paintless dent repair, working on car lots and working their dents out there. He decided he wanted to go out on his own, and he had a non-compete in the state of Michigan. So to honor that, he said, "Hey, I want to hit the road," and I said, "Okay, let's go." And we bought a camper and a fifth wheel and hit the road about a month and a half later. And I essentially learned metalworking on the road with him during hailstorms out of state. And so we lived in that camper, Martin, for about 18 months, almost on and off, but for the majority of the time. So thank goodness we liked each other and loved each other. And so that's how we started dating. That was our dating phase. And we came back to Michigan after the non-compete and started our route back at the dealerships, and exceeded and met goals and exceeded skill levels, and started figuring out pretty quickly that we were just continually in love with understanding how to fix things that nobody else could fix. And so me having a retail background and understanding the front of the house, perception, and Dwayne being a technician and understanding the back end, but also me being now a technician, it was essentially a recipe to go retail. So we started getting into our retail space almost 5 years ago. And so we've run that small business together for almost 16 years. And 2 years ago, approximately, I was able to earn a Master Gold certification in the paintless dent repair industry, becoming the first woman in the country and in the industry to earn that. And now I am also dual master certified, one in extreme damage, metalworking that out, and number two, with hail damage repairs. So it's been pretty exciting, and I definitely use that as a marketing position in our retail location. I told my husband I'm the best marketing piece we have, because people always remember the female in the shop, right? And especially when I know what I'm doing, I'm not just batting my eyelashes and taking phone calls.
That's right. That's right. Let's start by just explaining what is PDR, because someone may not know it. It's a fascinating field because to me, it's a science and an art.
Yes, for sure. So some people might understand paintless dent repair as finding their dent guy. We'll use the loose terms, the street terms. Finding their dent guy at the dealership, and they need their door ding sucked out or pushed out, right? And so when you understand actually the value of paintless dent repair, where you are massaging the back of the metal in many locations on bar panels, and you're metalworking that up to a level and dialing it back down, metalworking it back up, dialing it back down to get it flat, to where it meshes, flat with the car panel. There's also things, called glue pulling, which essentially, if you're from the body shop, industry, it kind of be like a less invasive way of like stud welding, kind of, except we're not damaging the surface. So it's essentially people want to use a lot of the loose terms that you're rolling out dents, you're sucking them out. There's a lot of loose street terms for it, but essentially you're metalworking the panel, back flat, and there's lots of benefits. Sometimes it's more expensive to do that than to go get the panel filled and painted or replaced. However, maybe you have an antique vehicle or a classic vehicle, or you want to save your factory finish, or maybe you don't want your vehicle in a shop for 2 or 3 weeks, and we can turn that over in a day or a day and a half. So the list goes on and on and on with the benefits. But it's a very unique skill when you get to a a top skill level because
Mm-hmm.
it's the industry itself is really niche, but then you cut it down to, just the people that actually work body line dents and understand how to work aluminum and understand how to work, when the metal is bulked up versus just dented in, how do you flow that in correctly without causing further damage, and how far should you go with the repair so it's still a safe repair. So there's a lot of nuances, but when you care about what you do and you build your brand in the manner that people understand that you have expectations for yourself, and when you know you're happy with it, they're going to be happy with it. It's really a win-win for everybody. So we're very passionate about that. We've been at it for quite a long time. I'm a 16-year tech. Again, we've run that particular small business for about 16 years in total. And we're pretty sought after in the state of Michigan because of our skill level. But not only our skill level, but our integrity. We're not willing to just intake a job to be emotionally charged with the money. We need to make sure that our blood, sweat, and our tears and our word means something. And if we can take care of something for someone, we're going to honor that.
And then you also have a family. So there's a lot of pieces involved. And I've gotten to meet your wonderful husband, and he clearly is just he radiates family guy, loving his kids and wanting to be there, but he also needs to be on the road sometimes because that's
Yes.
where the storms are. And a lot of this is based on being available to where there is damage from hail or something else, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
So talk about that merging. We've got a trailer now. Did you have kids with you in this trailer to start with, or was that later on, or where do we start
No.
with the?
No, that was pre-kids. So we have since then, sold that camper. But that was definitely pre-kids. I don't know if we would be able to shove us all in there and keep our sanity and be able to show up for each other in the same manner. So when he travels, we try to, land him in a extended stay or an Airbnb, something a little more comfortable for him. And then of course we'll, visit as a family, and he'll travel back and forth.
So that's exciting to create consistency over time. You've got you're running the base where you have your own bays and everything in one location. Then he goes out during different seasonal times to be with where the main damage is occurring.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So essentially, I keep the shop bays and the business steady through the times that he's not here, and go ahead and take care of any nuances that he needs help, with him being on the road, and balancing everything else, just understanding how to. Everybody uses the word balance actually, but I want to revert back and just maybe call that harmonizing, because it really is just kind of all over the place in understanding how you want to spend your time and making sure that you're not stressing yourself out, which is a domino effect to the team or your family or other business peers. And I just, I like to harmonize is the best word to, place there. But yeah, certainly keeping the shop steady. And then when he gets called out, accepting the contracts that are a little bit higher, it makes sense for our foundation, our business, so that we can funnel those monies to help advance us in other manners, such as investments or things of that nature, keeping our kids, in the schools that we choose, and kind of structuring our life in a it's a little bit chaotic, but it's a caged chaotic, and it works for us. And it just, allows us to go on the vacations we want, and just, really kind of formulate what we enjoy.
Talk about transitioning from working for someone else, which both of you started with, to being self-employed, because that's a big change. One, you show up at work and that's called a job. And the other, often I explain, as you wake up and you're unemployed each day because you're generating everything. And I think that's a transition that I've worked with a lot of people on and coaching. And it's tough because they might be great at promoting someone else's product. But when you promote your own product, any unresolved issues you have in life are right in your face. And
Yes.
I don't know if you've experienced it, but that's what I've seen over and over. So it's almost like its own personal transformation. Get over it, move on. Class by moving from a day job marketing someone else and being self-employed.
Yeah, it's really an interesting dynamic because you really start to learn what you'll almost tolerate and what you won't. And when you don't have anybody else to set the schedule for you, to lay the groundwork and the path for you, the marketing for you, set up the money for you, everything is literally just a blank slate. And you really have to have I'll say it in a nice way, but the cojones to show up for yourself and other people in an honorable way. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes that does not look like an honorable way. Sometimes you will make mistakes, and that is in front of everyone's face. You have to learn to become humble, and you have to learn to navigate that appropriately so that you can move forward and operate on a level that is acceptable for your standard. You have to create your own standard. You are the business. When you stand there and you give your word and you show your blood, sweat, and your tears and your effort and your everything, because it's you're creating the standard, you're creating the value boundaries. You are the answer. And you have to make really strong and bold decisions on how you're going to stand up, even when it hurts, and even when you have losses in business, or you're just not feeling it that day. It doesn't matter. You stand up and you show the world what you're made of, because that is going to ripple out in a big, big way. And that doesn't need to be essentially covered up. In my mind, you show people what you've got so you know how to lead. That's a part of, what I feel is being a success mechanism, is showing it all so that people understand all the mechanisms, so that people understand how to intentionally attempt to build a proper ecosystem that works for you, so that they can decide, who to follow or who to, look up to, and pedestal, and, all of those really interesting dynamics when you run a business or you're stepping out into the world differently.
Yeah. And this is, to me, one of the biggest challenges for people is they really need to just do it, And then the other aspect is getting the first real hard criticism and learning to survive that. Because, when you work for someone else, it's like, oh, they're not satisfied. It's okay. It's not your business. You can say, I'm so sorry you were upset. We'll handle it. But it kind of hits right to the heart when you get that direct criticism and it's your business. You have to develop that compassion and awareness, but you also have to develop that shield for someone attacking on something that might be an honest mistake and they are just coming at you for it.
Yeah, it's a part of it. I know that there's a lot that goes into that, Martin, and I think that's when I say you need to have the cojones to stand up and stand your ground. I don't believe customer is always right. You're not always right. You have to look at people. I know everybody wants to create this barrier in the middle, like you're the customer and you're the business person, but can we just get back to just being a good human being? Can we just look people in the eye and know to apologize wholeheartedly when we do something incorrect or off kilter? Or you're not kind of vibing with somebody and you're saying something with your words, but they're intaking it in a different way and their posture, changes. Can we just learn to, get back to some core values of respect and integrity and understand how to speak with kindness? And when you're in a moment that's not full of kindness, handling your business, whatever the situation is, have a little grace for yourself and that other person, and just do your best to navigate it. And sometimes it's not going to go the way that you want, and that's okay. But build your standard around having people know what to expect. And when you put up a front of everything's going to be perfect, and you better live up to it. And perfection doesn't mean that it always goes right. And in my mind, perfection is navigating the situation, good, bad, or ugly, and let's come to it in a result that works for everyone, because we're not robots, we're human beings. So, I think that there's a lot that goes into that, but we really need to be, getting back to, I think, a lot of the core values that some of us have lost on understanding how to communicate with people instead of our emotion.
One of my quotes in the customer service course is, the customer's not always right. It's just too expensive to prove they're wrong, but it's also important to learn how to hold your ground on what's so. You hear
Yes.
them out, and then you communicate, this is what we've done, here's what occurred. And then sometimes just saying, what would it take to make you happy? And when they say, well, I want you to give me a whole new car, you go, sounds like a good idea. That's not an option I'm willing to offer. And this is what I'm willing to offer. And again, I want to reiterate, this happens by failure, by learning, by getting up again. And that's what I've seen you do from the first time we met at Mobile Tech Expo, and you had your booth, and I got to do an interview. You're in the class. That was great to have you. And came up and said how valuable it is. I say, I want to get a testimonial. You responded to it. Then we got the video, then started to get to know each other. And this is important to understand. You can't just learn this by reading a book. You have to get on the court and have enough failures to build confidence. And that's what I'm hearing here is it's the failures and getting back and on, but it also is having a support structure. You've learned to set up a positive support structure in your life. So you're not just doing this alone. One is your great husband, and I'll be talking about him some more. So hopefully he'll be embarrassed by this. But the other thing is, beyond just the immediate family. So kind of talk about how you've learned, I have to build my support structure for moving forward.
Yeah, so I don't come from the nicest, background. I grew up in trauma, chaos. I've been divorced. I've been in and out of, shelters. I did drugs for 10 years, had to, overcome that. And you learn that really you have to take responsibility for yourself, period. You have to have some accountability, and no matter where you come from, I barely passed high school. The list just goes on. And really, if I was to onion peel, some of these layers, it would really blow people's mind that I'm even standing in front of you. And I know in the past I've shared a few things with you as well. And we have to be able to get up every morning and look at ourselves and just say, I'm going to do the best that I can today, and not lie to ourselves. Sometimes we tell ourselves these stories to make ourselves feel better, and we're really not willing to do the work. And that's a lot of times what I'll share with, in other types of, interviews and podcasts, and even with my own, close peers, that I'm not here to listen to your gossip or anything like that. I wake up every day prepared to work, because the, breath in my lungs means something. And we need to be very, careful in on how we utilize that. And when you really understand that, on a deeper level of what that really means to you, you start building value boundaries around, what that means. and how you are going to communicate and ripple that out with with the people around you, and making sure also that you're making the right choices of having particular people and situations around you, understanding when to say yes with boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and when to say no, again with boundaries. So that is something that I've learned. I'm 43 years old, and it's taken a while for me to, learn those things. And those things were really, really, really in front of my face until I was prepared to take responsibility for some of my own actions and words and my own demeanor. And when I started, really looking at myself and understanding that, I'm the answer. If I want these things and I want people to behave around me in a certain manner, and I want certain things to happen, I need to be responsible for how, I carry myself in the world, being a wife, being a mom, and what I want that to look like. And so you really have to deep dive into some layers that are really uncomfortable. And you have to be okay with that. And you have to stop, telling yourself stories and letting your brain get in the way of what you want for comfort, and really start, understanding what direction you want to be at and how you want to honor yourself and honor the people around you by showing up.
What I hear is you really had to reinvent a new you to step into,
Mm-hmm.
because the one you were raised with was insufficient to produce the future you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important message. Is so many people I've met that are amazing and accomplished, when I hear their childhood, I go, I don't know how they survived that. It's almost like the top performers that got everything in high school. I'd go, well, they're not going to succeed very well, and they're doomed, because
Yeah.
it's that transformation. And one quote from I believe it's Ospensky's is, we have to learn to transform our poisons into honey, and
Mm-hmm.
how to take that past. And part of it is taking, you're right, responsibility. It doesn't mean that some of those horrible things that occurred aren't always horrible and aren't bad, but I got to take responsibility to how I chose to respond to it, and how I will in the future. And that's really the real soul and courage work that I think of, and the opportunity that being self-employed and building a business gives someone the ability to get they're going to come to the door, and you might have been pulled back to little girl that whatever, and I've got to show up and step into this version of me. But
Mm-hmm.
also feeding it and building it is another aspect, and that's what I've seen you keep just doing, and it's so exciting to understand. Any advice for someone who's kind of stuck in the morass of, oh my God, I've been victimized. I've had all these horrible things happen, and I don't want to underestimate. They are
Yeah.
bad things. We don't want to belittle the horrific things that can occur. I grew up in D.C. I tell people I know how evil the world truly can be. There's no question about it. But we also have to separate and go, who am I going to step forward in? And talk about some
Mm-hmm.
advice in that you might have.
My advice would be to, number one, just take a deep breath and understand that you're not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And also to take a deep breath and understand the world does not revolve around you. I'm really sorry to say that. And there's sometimes we need to be really careful on the level of victim we want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that people sometimes don't want to hear that, but I am sitting in front of you, Martin,
Yeah.
and in front of all of you,
Yeah.
and I am living proof that you can live in hell over and over and over again. And and understand that there's a new day, and sometimes those days aren't what you want them to be. And sometimes those days aren't, what you envisioned them to be. Sometimes it's okay to be still, but there's a lot of days you need to stand up and just be bold. And that boldness should be in the joys, the celebrations, all the fantastic things. But you can be bold and be still. You have to understand that you have to get up. You have to get up because, again, like I said earlier, we have breath in our lungs. So we have to understand at a very deep level that sometimes the things that happen around us, those people, aren't capable of maybe thinking or operating in life, in a particular manner. So, my thing is there's things sometimes that are planted in our minds, that we, want in life, and we get stuck because we're like, oh, I'm way over here, and yes, that's correct. I'm way over here and I want to be over here. And there's all of this middle ground. And you're like, man, that's so much work. And gosh, yes, it is work. And that should excite you, because when we move a certain way, and we fall forward, okay, instead of just staying in one place, these really miraculous things happen when you start focusing on the things that are in front of you and not, in the back of you. And sometimes we get triggered and things of that nature. Let's say you come from particular, things, and you're like, man, I would really love to start my own business and I would love to do these things, but I just don't know how. Well, there's ways, there's resources, there's conversations you can have. People walk into other small businesses and offer them a cup of coffee and say, hey, can I pick your brain for an hour? I would really like to understand, some of the nuances of how you got started. I'm really scared, I'm really, I'm nervous about, getting going. But if you're going to stay in the same mindset and stay in the same ecosystem around the same exact people, we're running around the same exact bush expecting to see something different in your scenery. And I just don't, believe that that's going to get you anywhere. You have to be able to sometimes, I used to do this exercise with myself where, you write down, okay, well, I'm in fear. Great. What would the situation look like if I wasn't in fear? Let's pretend for a minute that the fear wasn't there. What would that look like? What would that fantasy look like? What about anxiety? Man, if I didn't have anxiety over this, what would that look like? If I wasn't afraid, what would that look like? Because every once in a while, I think, people, we get all jazzed up and might be listening to like our favorite song, the sun's going, the sunroof's open and, and you're feeling good. You don't have the fear, you don't have the anxiety. Pause for a minute and write those things down. Write those things down so that you understand how, to maybe move into that person instead of staying stuck over here. And yeah, we definitely don't want to minimize, what people go through and traumas and, things of that nature and being triggered and stuff like that. But listen, we have a choice and we have to have the responsibility and the accountability, not only for ourselves, for the people around us. We have to be able to shine our light adequately to intake the blessings and be a blessing to other people. That's just something I really strongly believe, because I'm living proof that that's what it is. That's everybody has their own beliefs, but I am living proof that is, you can make it happen. I promise you can make it happen.
That's great advice. That process you gave is also advice, and really good advice is writing this down. What if, for me, I had been put in what, when I grew up, was called the retarded class. That we didn't have dyslexia then, but that was a pretty brutal place because we made fun of those kids, And I realized at 30 something, I had to invent a new me to live out of, because otherwise I was this broken little kid that was put in the class with the kids we made fun of. And I had really built such a mechanism around it. And so I would start. I went through my practice marriage end. I had a practice marriage too, like you, and I said, okay, I'm competent at opening doors. I found something, a seed I could start with that I could say I'm fully confident at that. I mean, that's how low my own confidence was. Now, I could put on a pretty good show, but inside, that's what was going on. And I'd go to the door and go, okay, I can turn this competently and open the door. And started with that. Then I go, well, if I'm not a complete idiot, what if I'm a smart person that often does dumb things? That's why that valuable piece you gave. What if I'm a smart person that?
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly I started to you have to collect that list of when it occurs. Go, okay, I'm going to pull that into me, and I'm claiming that, because especially with my experience of people who've had much greater trauma than me, the core is collecting more evidence of how there's no hope,
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to go, I'm going to claim that as a win and kind of push it into your psyche and go, okay, I did that. That was a smart thing I did. And then the next one, and you're building this kind of like sculpting, one chisel at a time. And then you step back and you go, wow, there's something new here. It still needs improvement. It'll probably be my whole lifetime. And still someone will say something and have me zoom back, but I now have a pathway to get back up again.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important piece to understand. The tragedy in getting caught into a victim role is you give all your power away. You actually, you empower the victim, the people who victimize you. You empower those that hurt you by doing this. You say, yeah, you're right. I'm going to validate by my life. But when you disrupt it, and you actually take on a new role step by step. Of course, I want to not exclude good therapy or whatever works, or support groups, or, any of these are important to have. Then you start carving that new you. And that's what I've seen you do, even in the short time I've gotten to know you. I mean, I don't remember, you were always likable, approachable, professional, but that level of confidence I watched build up even in the short time I've known you. And you've carved it and you've earned it. And there's one person I know, and I say that building they own, they earned every brick in that building, Yeah.
Well, I like that you touched on too, Martin, on being conscious about your attributes, right? And that's something that, I talk about in my book, is understanding how to hone in on what you are good at, and even if the world has told you you're this and this and this, what one thing can you wake up and say, I am this?
Yeah.
I am loved. I am valued. I am respected. I am silly. I'm creative. The list just goes on. And if you can't find one to attach yourself to because you feel so lost and so stuck and so chained, then Google it. Google 50 attributes and look at them in front of you. I'm a high visionary, so I'm a very visual person. So systems and processes and mechanisms I can cognitively go through, but I become very stagnant very quickly in them. So if you're a visual person and you're stuck, then maybe get some attributes in front of you. I can guarantee you're going to find one that you're like, you know what? I'm that. I'm that. And before the world gets a hold of you every day, before your cell phone starts ring-a-dinging, before your kids need you, before you got to cook the breakfast and feed the dogs and go to work, try to figure out how you're going to make money, figure out how you're going to dig yourself out of a hole, or also have the thoughts of, how can I not tear myself up mentally today. Before all of those things happen, maybe write that one attribute on your mirror when you're brushing your teeth so that you can just remind yourself that if you're here and you're breathing and you're seeing and you're hearing, it's for a reason. And you may not know that reason for years and years and years to come, but you should also be in a seeking mode constantly, always seeking, always seeking. And you're not always going to find the answers. And if you're anything like me, the minute you find the answer, you're off to another answer because you're like, I can't settle in this. I'm good here. I've celebrated. I've taken my hour of celebration or week of celebration. Now let me see what else I can build. Let me see, if I'm stagnant, who can I call today to help celebrate them? How can I shine my light because I'm in that season? How can I, if I'm in a low season, pick up the phone and be vulnerable and raw? So because doing that and sharing testimony and light domino effects and helps other people know that it's okay. And it's not, you have to, again, be very careful, I think, Martin, I think that we have to be really careful of how we use our breath in our lungs. Because last time I checked, the good Lord put that there. I didn't put that there. So I use it. And sometimes, I think most of the time it's for good. Sometimes it's not for good. But, I have a 2-day rule. So if it's something sits on me and I know I need to backtrack, then I'll do that. But we have to understand that sometimes the boldness doesn't always look so pretty, whether it's business stuff or personal stuff. But if we don't unravel ourselves and build ourselves and create boundaries so that people understand who they are, if I'm talking to you today or a year from now versus somebody walking through the door, I am who I am. Okay. I'm not, I'm not trying to sway or look for validation in a way that's going to majorly, change the way that I think, because I've created some pretty bold boundaries in my heart that in my core that are they're mine. They're mine, and I'm going to stand bold in them. And I'm going to speak my truth, and I'm going to move my feet, and I'm going to move my thoughts, and I'm going to move my efforts forward, good, bad, or ugly. I'm going to move and keep moving because I can. And I have a job to do every single morning. And sometimes that job is not focused around making money. It's focused about, helping to, again, harmonize marriage and motherhood and business, being a good friend, being a good peer, showing people to stand up in a different way. That's my job. All of that's my job. And I am honored to have that job. So that's how I operate.
Which leads to your new book that you've just launched, and very exciting. And it's really, if you go through and check all those things off, I don't see how you can't improve your life. So
yes.
Talk a little bit about it. Then I want to back up about the push metal clothing, because that's, to me, was the next step. But we can't step over this book because you're getting excerpts of it from you live here. But it's really a whole bunch of ideas of, like, if you just take each one of these on, or maybe take on one a day and work on it, it clearly is going to improve your life and your work.
Yeah, for sure. So the book is called Ellivate. I realize a lot of people use the words Ellivate. My last name is Ellison, so I spelt it a little differently so I didn't run into any major issues there. So it's Ellivate. So it's a little bit of a play off my last name, which, I'm going to sideline the book for a quick second, but I like that because I take on my husband's last name, and the things that he showed me as a human being when we, first got together was respect and patience and integrity by the way that he moved in his life. And so with taking on his name Ellison, I think it's appropriate to also include part of that name in Ellivate. because when we understand and create boundaries around those items of love and respect and patience and integrity, aren't we elevating? Are we elevating everything around us? So the things that I do have to have meaning, they have to be a play off of each other, or I'm just not interested in doing it. So, the book really is unlocking areas of you that maybe you just didn't realize, needed to be unlocked. It's a very, very easy read. I know sometimes self-help books or, the journey books are a little long-winded. I'm not a huge reader. I'm more of an audio person. So I think the pages maybe are 50 pages. And yes, I have one full dedication page to my husband because he's amazing. And yes, that's the first page, everybody. So, it's really just understanding how to, it's not a book that you race through. Like Martin says, you're going to go chapter by chapter. It's 15 chapters. There's 7 action steps, and it's meant for you to sit with these action steps and understand how to plug and play what your thought process is going to be in with these action steps so you can have movement. And again, when you have movement, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, something's going to happen, right? You're either gonna have something amazing happen, or you're going to make a mistake. You're going to learn, and all of those things are great. But really, sometimes I think where some of us get lost is we think, oh, I'm going to do all of these things. But we never understand that we have to peel back the onion layer sometimes and hit the reset button from back here. Mm-hmm. Some people can be done with that and start where they are and move forward. Some people, like myself, had to go way back and peel very, very deeply. And when that happened, a part of my own identity of trauma and chaos and drugs and being ashamed and living in fear and living in anxiety, not having anxiety moments, but just living in it, having, bodily effects from that. And the list goes on and on and on. So when 99% of that stuff is removed, you're like, man, who am I now, right? How do I fill that bucket appropriately and create a standard, whether it's, business or personal, but, just for yourself. Now, how do I create a standard in a path that's very unknown to me? How do I circle the people, or create a community and foster a good tribe? How do I connect the dots around me to where everything just harmonizes? And understanding that you're really not hitting a finish line until you're not breathing anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So it's got to be a journey. What are you willing to be flexible on learning? And so you start kind of creating your identity around, this person that you can become, bold in, and understand you do have infinite possibilities. I'm living proof of it. Mm-hmm. You will be living proof of it when you make the steps, good, bad, or ugly, those steps, not just the good. And sometimes that will absolutely break your heart, because the things that you hold on to that become almost like it's a part of you, and you become lost. Some people become so lost that when you try to achieve and you try to open businesses and you try to do these things, then you get triggered and these internal things come back. You're not worth doing this, or no, you shouldn't have done that. That was, you're not ready for that. You are ready for it. Stand up and take what is in your path, and let's make some moves. The book talks about being a ripple effect. The book talks about having accountability and responsibility for yourself so that you can show up differently for other people. The book talks about you are the answer. I love that chapter, because we are the answer. Nobody's coming to do it for you. Okay? We can lean on people, for advice and support and things like that. But you have to be able to stand up. You have to be able to get those shoulders back, and you have to be able to do the work. And when you understand so boldly that you are the answer, you're the answer that's going to create the right ripple effect for everyone around you, it becomes very powerful and it becomes very personal. And when you a lot of people talk about like the rippling out into the world. Well, I mean, it kind of starts with you. It doesn't like go backwards. You know what I mean? But we have to sometimes just really get real with ourselves. And so I would say for the people that are looking at least for one nugget of change, or if they feel stuck in any manner, if they feel lost, I sure as heck know if you feel lost, this book's for you. Anything that, if you're looking to level up and you're just like, man, I've hit a plateau and I just don't understand what I need to do, you're going to pull something from this book. I also have a workbook if that goes along with this book also, and also a third book, which is a journal. So the book itself gives the 7 action steps. If you want to dive a little bit deeper, then you have every chapter supplies 2 action steps. And then it allows room in that workbook to make notations that dives a little bit deeper. And then the journal is 1 action step that is even a little bit deeper with each chapter. So you can get the book individually or separately. The workbook is called Expand. So we're really talking about expanding your foundation and helping that to be a little stronger for you internally and externally. And then the journal is helping you follow steps, elevating. So you're expanding your foundation in order to elevate further. And that can be applied in business or personal.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure the links are available for them to get all of these. And the next topic I'd like to talk about is you went from doing the work along with your husband and becoming a student of it to coming up with a clothing line. And I think that was another aspect of taking a risk, entrepreneurship. And it wasn't just symbols on a shirt. You really wanted to create something. You noticed there was a missing piece in the industry, PDR, of clothing not really optimized for men or women in this type of environment. And tell me how you got into that and about its growth. And now you've made it available for anyone who works out or fitness. And I think that's another story of building one business and then seeing another opportunity, working your way up with it.
Yes, for sure. So that brand is Push Metal. And I've had that, I believe, for over 5 or 6 years now. It is trademarked. We do have that registered. And essentially, it actually started when my husband and I told my husband, I said, hey, Dwayne, if we needed to network differently in our industry, I would love to come up with a different way to do that. And so I was brainstorming, and I was looking, and most of the things that were sold in our industry was software, tools, training, things of that nature. And so I told him, I said, I think I want to start a clothing brand for the technicians. He's like, okay, that's fine. What do you want to call it? And I said, let's call it Push Metal, because that's what we do, is we push metal. And he's like, yeah, great. So I made the word together as one. For a few different reasons, but the word push was more of like a grittier effect, and the word metal kind of like a shiny effect. So just again, I didn't know it at the time, but now it just completely applies. I think with like everything I'm about is just helping people understand, it doesn't matter where you come from, in your grit, in your, all of that, and persevering. And so I started creating some messaging behind that, because after about 30, 45 days of my this new great idea I had about printing, logo on t-shirts, that would be good for, the men and the women, making sure that, the type of shirt that I picked out was a little bit longer, because when we're working on cars, we don't want love handles and butt cracks sticking out. Nobody needs to see all that. And so people loved that. But after a short period of time, I got really bored with it. And I thought, man, if I'm going to keep doing this, it's actually a lot of work, and I need to make it mean something. So that's when I sat down and came up with grind, desire, persevere, just grinding through, what needs to happen, having that grit, and understanding that if you don't have the desire because you're not living in the arena that you should be living in, it's really hard to, persevere. So for me, those three words really applied: grind, desire, persevere. It was a stepping stone. And so that seemed to take off, and a lot of technicians started liking that. So I started introducing hats and sweatshirts and kind of switching things up. I did have a company try to come after me because of the way that the wording was set up, with it having two different effects. They felt that one of the words was infringing on a very old trademark they had. So I had to go through and battle and pay quite a bit of money to fight for that, which I almost gave up. And I called my husband on the road, and I'm crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to, just quit, and just let this go. I mean, we can't afford to fight this and things like that. And he just, in his wise way, just said, what is the brand about? And I'm like, what? What are you asking me? He says, what is the brand about? He says, what is your tagline? And I'm crying, right? Yeah. And he says, I said, grind, desire, persevere. And he sits there, he doesn't say anything. And then I just sit there and I'm waiting, it's like watching. Right. I'm like, okay. And he says, my wife doesn't quit. And so I lost it again. Yeah. And he says, figure it out. Yeah. Figure out how to make it work, yeah. And so I love that about him, because he's not always, looking to step in and be, hero, but he's like, step up and figure it out. You'll figure it out. I'll support you in whatever you want to do, but you need to figure it out. Yeah. Cry your tears, right, and let's get it done. And so I called, and I was able to save that brand and get it, trademarked by making the word truly one word, and making sure that the color, when things were printed or the effects were completed, it needed to be done across the board. Mm-hmm. So, it was a simple fix, but it took a lot of money and a lot of months. So we, over time, over it becoming essentially a lifestyle brand in the paintless dent repair industry, we got the opportunity to have, the items sold in one of the tool distribution centers. We would set up at expos, which that's where I met you, Martin. And, we sold, quite a bit of merchandise there. We would have shop banners and things of that nature. But I a couple of years ago wanted to do something bigger with it. I felt like it was starting to kind of plateau. And so I rebranded it in good old fashioned Crystal way, and hooked up with some people that helped me understand distribution overseas. And we now pair up with a company over there that helps us do cut and sew items. So they're essentially, kind of customized. And we offer, a lot of items in the fitness industry, because push metal, applies to fitness. So we have custom joggers, muscle tees. We have seamless leggings and bras for the girls. That's, the new thing. We have custom tags. I have custom gift boxes. Wrapping paper. So we really take it to, a whole nother level of making things just really sharp looking.
Mhm.
And so we set up at the Arnold Expo last year in New Orleans, so that was exciting. And everybody can, get the, fitness items at pushmetalgear.com. And so, it really is just something I enjoy doing. It's another part of the creative stuff. And as far as packaging and things like that, I have someone that takes care of, that for me. But yeah, that's just another thing I really enjoy, kind of spearheading and taps into some of my creative side, but also has some meaning behind it regarding the wording and the placement and, just kind of putting those puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, that's exciting. So that's another example of having one business and then seeing an opportunity and moving within your means and then having another chance to face, okay, I might have to let this go, and then choosing to take it on. One thing I've known, Crystal, through you is that your faith is very important to you. And I'd like to close with sharing a little bit about that and how you let it guide you in your life.
Yeah, so I would say, when I said I was going to do no more drugs, and I was in a very, very low place and found myself on the bathroom floor
Mhm.
and decided I was going to detox all by myself. I laid in that floor transparently. I was naked in that floor many of times because the cold floor felt good, but it's where I felt like I belonged at that point in life, is next to the toilet
Mhm.
on the floor with nothing.
Mhm.
And there was days that I shook so bad from detoxing that I would pass out.
Mhm.
And when I got strength to get up, I'd go get something to eat and I'd lay right back in that floor where I felt like I belonged. And that's where the good Lord met me. And because I literally would just pray out loud and say, one more day, if you just give me one more day, I'll do better. I'll do better. I'll do better. Just one more day. Let me wake up one more day, because I didn't know if I was going to wake up. I didn't know if I cared if I woke up,
Mhm.
but I would verbalize, just let me wake up one more day. I'll do better. I'll do better. And I feel like good, better, ugly, I've stepped up
Mhm.
and I've done better.
Mhm.
And so here I sit almost 18 years later, going through that and making that promise. And it's very humbling that I still have breath in my lungs.
Mhm. Yeah, and clearly, your faith continues to lead you in making decisions and everything we've talked about as well. You also do speaking, motivational speaking too.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so we've done a couple workshops here at our place of business. Those are more of the youth workshops, and that's where we print off, cool little shirts for the kids and things like that. And they always get testimony first, so good old fashioned
Yeah.
testimony first. So I always encourage the kids, letting them know that anything truly is possible. It's not just lip service. Of course, I don't go too much of my, past, but I
Right.
do, announce a few of the celebration points that I've had as a female in the industry that we're in, because that took, that was a pretty big success point for me. And just helping people understand how to mesh some of their puzzle pieces. But everything really has to start with having integrity and truly understanding what that means, having patience for yourself, understanding, I talk to the kids about understanding how to slow your words down and speak with boldness and respect so people
Mhm.
hear you, because the moment that your emotion arises, you get a little checked out because your focus goes to that. So I've spoke at one of the high schools here locally. I've spoke at one of our expos. I look forward to having some additional speaking events that are a little bit larger. So again, none of that stuff makes me nervous because really I'm just speaking, truth and understanding that I have, again, a job to do. And that is showing up for myself so people understand that it's okay to show up for themselves too, because sometimes people just, I think, need to know that it's okay. It's okay to stand up. It's okay to be proud of yourself. It's okay to help other people understand, to be proud of themselves and help celebrate each other, good, bad, or ugly, because we're all just learning. We're all learning, you guys, and we're just all trying, and anything is possible. I promise you anything is possible, but you have to accept the responsibility that you have work to do on yourself, and there's so many things that you can flourish with, but like Martin said earlier, you have to understand who you are, and sometimes those things change in seasons. You have to be able to hold on to those and know, life. I don't. I think some of us become complacent, and choose the easy route because we want to be comfortable. And so I usually run to the left and figure out, okay, well, where's the uncomfortable place? Because that's where I want to be. Because, last time I checked, there's nothing out there except other people that say it should be easier. There are easier ways and easier things, but when I was born, or when I was a child, or even me being an adult, show me where somebody has said life is easy. Like it just, life is not easy. Why do we think that we can take the easy way out and just coast along? That's why we become stuck. That's why we become, staying in the brokenness and holding on to these, chains. We have to challenge ourselves and other people. But it really does start with us. We have to be able to look in the mirror and just be excited. Just, man, what is today going to bring? Who am I going to run into today? Or what am I going to do intentionally to encourage someone every single day? What am I going to do to make that change? And we have to stop being so focused, I think, in trying to do all these big, overwhelming, extravagant things that we think are going to change the world when we can't even have the guts to change some things within ourselves. And so it's always really exciting to talk about, because it's not, I'm not giving lip service. I'm a living proof, that these things can be navigated through, and they are uncomfortable.
Yeah. I do have a T-shirt inspired by college students. I made a list of quotes, and I said, pick the quote you like the most. And one of the popular ones that I wrote down is, if your life's boring, it's because you are boring. Life begins outside your comfort zone. And so I actually have a T-shirt on Amazon with it. For fun, but that was one of the ones they found the most profound. I think this was so fun to chat about it. I'll put links. There'll be links below for all your content to learn more about it. And just want to keep encouraging you. It was so exciting to meet you, have you in the class, and see your evolution along the way. So this was an overdue, really a deep dive into your journey. And
very overdue.
Yeah. And I'm excited we had it, and look forward to somewhere we'll cross and pass again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. My friend, I'll just tell you real quick before we go, my friend, she says, what do you mean you wrote a book? Like, when did this happen? I say, girl, I just do things.
Right.
I was like, I wanted to do it. I was shelving, certain things, and because I really couldn't put energy in it. And I took 3 different things off of a mental shelf and decided to write a book. She's like, when? I'm like, girl, I told you, I just do things.
Right. That's a great way to end it. Just do it. Excellent. Fantastic. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Take care.